Alex Rivera stared at the ceiling of his tiny studio apartment, watching a water stain that seemed to grow bigger every day. The alarm clock on his nightstand showed 6:30 a.m., but he had been awake for hours, his mind racing with worry. Today was different, though. Today he had something that had become increasingly rare in his life: hope. 3 months ago, his world had turned upside down. The small manufacturing company where he had worked for 2 years suddenly closed its doors. No warning. No severance package, just a hastily written note taped to the entrance saying the business was shutting down due to financial difficulties. Alex remembered standing there with his coworkers, all of them staring at that piece of paper like it might change if they looked at it long enough. Since then, every day had been a battle. His savings, which were never much to begin with, disappeared faster than morning dew. First went the little luxuries. No more coffee from the cafe downstairs, no more weekend movies, no more takeout on Friday nights. Then came the hard choices, choosing between groceries and his phone bill, walking everywhere to save on bus fare, and eating the same bowl of rice and beans for dinner most nights. His apartment, which had once felt cozy, now felt like a prison. The walls seemed closer together each day and the silence was deafening. His neighbors were kind enough, especially Mrs. Chen next door, who sometimes knocked with extra soup or leftover bread. But Alex hated feeling like a charity case. He was 24 years old with a college degree, yet he felt like he was drowning in slow motion. The job search had been brutal. Every morning he would sit at his old laptop, the one with the cracked screen and the battery that died if he unplugged it for more than 20 minutes. He would scroll through job websites, sending out application after application: administrative assistant, warehouse worker, retail associate, customer service representative. He applied for everything and anything that might pay enough to keep his head above water. The rejections came in different forms. Sometimes it was a polite email thanking him for his interest, but informing him they had chosen another candidate. Other times it was just silence, his applications disappearing into some digital void where no one would ever read them. The worst were the interviews that went nowhere, sitting across from someone who had already decided he wasn't right for the job before he even walked through the door. His mother called every few days from their hometown, 300 miles away. She would ask how the job search was going, and he would lie, telling her things were looking up, that he had some promising leads. He couldn't bear to tell her the truth, that he was 2 weeks behind on rent, that he had been surviving on whatever free samples the grocery store offered, that he sometimes sat in the library all day just to have somewhere warm to be and free internet to use. But today felt different. Sterling and Associates had called him back after his online application. The woman on the phone, probably someone from Human Resources, had been professional but friendly. They wanted to meet with him for an administrative position. Nothing fancy, but it was a real job at a real company with benefits and a steady paycheck. The salary they mentioned wasn't life-changing, but it would be enough to pay his rent, buy groceries, and maybe even start saving a little bit again. Alex had spent the previous evening preparing. He researched the company, reading everything he could find online about their consulting business. He practiced answers to common interview questions in the mirror, trying to project confidence he didn't really feel. He pressed his only good shirt, the white button-down he had bought for his college graduation, and polished his dress shoes until they almost looked new again, despite the small crack near the left toe that he hoped no one would notice. The morning routine was careful and deliberate. He showered with the cheap soap he had bought in bulk, brushed his teeth twice, and combed his hair until every strand was in place. Looking in the bathroom mirror, he tried to see what a potential employer would see. Would they notice that his shirt was a little too big now after months of irregular meals? Would they see the stress in his eyes, the dark circles from too many sleepless nights? He had printed out 5 copies of his resume at the library yesterday, spending $2 he could barely afford on good paper. Each copy was perfectly aligned, no smudges or wrinkles. His resume looked impressive on paper: college graduate, previous work experience, volunteer activities from when he had time for such things. But he knew that dozens, maybe hundreds of other people probably had similar qualifications. Walking to the bus stop, Alex felt the weight of everything riding on this one interview. This wasn't just about getting a job anymore. It was about proving to himself that he could turn things around, that the last 3 months of rejection and struggle hadn't broken him completely. He thought about all the times he had sat in this same bus, heading to interviews that led nowhere, and he pushed those memories away. Today would be different. The bus ride downtown took 45 minutes, and Alex used every minute to mentally rehearse. He went over the company's history, their services, the questions he wanted to ask about the position. He reminded himself to sit up straight, make eye contact, and speak clearly. He thought about the stories he could tell about his previous job, the challenges he had overcome, the skills he had developed. As the bus pulled into the downtown district, Alex looked out at the tall buildings and busy sidewalks. Somewhere in this maze of concrete and glass was his future, hopefully a better one than the past few months had offered. Sterling and Associates was located in one of the nicer buildings, the kind with marble lobbies and security guards in crisp uniforms. He arrived at the building 30 minutes early, partly because he always allowed extra time for interviews, and partly because he had nowhere else to be. Standing on the sidewalk looking up at the impressive facade, Alex took a deep breath. In just a few minutes, he would walk through those doors and hopefully convince someone that he was worth taking a chance on. He had no way of knowing that in the next hour, his life would change in ways he never could have imagined. Sometimes the most important moments start as ordinary ones, and this Tuesday afternoon would prove to be anything but ordinary. Alex checked his watch one more time. Still 28 minutes early. He had always been the type to arrive ahead of schedule, but today that habit would change everything. The street around Sterling and Associates was busy with the usual lunch hour crowd. People in expensive suits hurried past, talking on phones or checking their tablets, everyone seemingly important and purposeful. He decided to take a quick walk around the block to calm his nerves. The autumn air was crisp, and Alex pulled his jacket tighter around himself. It wasn't his best jacket, but it was clean and matched his pants well enough. As he rounded the corner back toward the main entrance, he noticed the sidewalk had gotten more crowded. Office workers were streaming out of buildings for their lunch breaks. That's when he saw her. An older woman, probably in her 50s, was walking toward the building entrance. She was elegantly dressed in a navy blue business suit, carrying a leather briefcase that looked more expensive than Alex's entire wardrobe. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, and she moved with the confident stride of someone who belonged in this world of glass towers and important meetings. But something was wrong. She had stopped walking and was standing very still, one hand pressed against her chest. Her face had gone pale, and Alex could see even from 20 feet away that she was struggling. The woman looked around desperately as if searching for help, but the crowd of people continued flowing past her like water around a rock. Alex's feet started moving before his brain fully processed what was happening. In high school, he had taken a CPR and first aid course as part of a summer job at a community center. He never thought he would need to use it, but the training came flooding back as he approached the woman. She was breathing heavily now, short gasps that suggested she was in real distress. Her free hand was gripping the handle of her briefcase so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Alex could see sweat forming on her forehead despite the cool weather. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Alex asked, his voice gentle but urgent. The woman looked at him with grateful eyes. I can't breathe properly," she managed to say between gasps. "My chest. It feels like something heavy is sitting on it." Alex's heart started racing, but he forced himself to stay calm. Everything about her symptoms pointed to one thing, and he knew time was critical. He gently took her elbow to steady her. "I think you might be having a heart attack," he said quietly, not wanting to panic her further. "We need to get you help right away." The woman's eyes widened with fear, but she nodded. Alex quickly looked around and spotted a small area near the building entrance where there was less foot traffic. He carefully guided her there, supporting her weight as she leaned on him. "I'm going to call for an ambulance," Alex said, already pulling out his phone. "But first, let's get you sitting down." He helped her lower herself onto the low concrete ledge that bordered a small decorative garden. The woman was clearly struggling, her breathing becoming more labored. Alex remembered from his training that keeping the person calm and comfortable was crucial. "What's your name?" he asked as he dialed 911, thinking that keeping her talking might help. "Catherine," she whispered. Catherine Sterling. The name registered somewhere in the back of Alex's mind, but he was too focused on the emergency to think about why it sounded familiar. The 911 operator answered, and Alex quickly explained the situation, giving their exact location outside the Sterling and Associates building. while they waited for the paramedics. Alex stayed with Catherine, monitoring her condition. He loosened the collar of her blouse to help her breathe easier and elevated her legs slightly, remembering that this could help with circulation. Her briefcase had fallen to the side and Alex noticed some papers had scattered, but he ignored them, keeping his attention on Catherine. "The ambulance is coming," he assured her. "Just try to stay calm and breathe as normally as you can." Catherine nodded weakly. Despite her obvious distress, Alex could see strength in her eyes, a determination that suggested she was a fighter. She reached into her jacket pocket with a shaking hand and pulled out a small leather card case. "Take this," she said, pressing a business card into Alex's palm. "I want to thank you properly when this is over." Alex glanced at the card briefly before slipping it into his pocket. Right now, all that mattered was making sure Catherine got the medical help she needed. He could hear sirens in the distance growing louder as they approached. "They're almost here," Alex said, and Catherine managed a weak smile. The paramedics arrived within 6 minutes, though it felt like much longer to Alex. They were professional and efficient, quickly assessing Catherine's condition and confirming what Alex had suspected. They praised him for recognizing the symptoms and acting quickly, explaining that early intervention was crucial in heart attack cases. As they loaded Catherine onto a stretcher, she reached out and grabbed Alex's hand. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger now that she was getting proper medical care. "You saved my life." Alex felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Just get better," he said simply. The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, and suddenly Alex was alone on the sidewalk again. The crowd that had gathered to watch the excitement was already dispersing, people returning to their lunch plans and important meetings. The whole incident had lasted maybe 15 minutes, but Alex felt like he had lived through hours. He looked at his watch and felt his stomach drop. It was 2:10 p.m. He was already 10 minutes late for his interview, and he still needed to get through security and find the right floor. His carefully pressed shirt was wrinkled from helping Catherine, and he could feel that his hair was no longer perfectly combed. Alex hurried toward the building entrance, his mind racing. How could he explain this to the interviewer? Would they even believe him? He looked down at his clothes and realized he probably looked exactly like someone who had just helped with a medical emergency. Disheveled, stressed, and completely unprepared for a job interview. As he approached the security desk, Alex's hand brushed against his pocket, and he felt the business card Catherine had given him. He pulled it out and read it properly for the first time. The elegant lettering read, "Catherine Sterling, Chief Executive Officer, Sterling and Associates." Alex stopped walking so suddenly that someone behind him bumped into his shoulder. Catherine Sterling, the CEO of the company where he was supposed to be interviewing. The woman whose life he had just saved was the head of the entire organization, but there was no time to process this revelation. He was already 15 minutes late, and every second that passed made his chances of salvaging this interview smaller. Alex took a deep breath, straightened his jacket as best he could, and headed for the elevators, having no idea that the next hour would be even more challenging than the last. The elevator seemed to move in slow motion as Alex watched the floor numbers climb. 3rd floor, 4th floor, 5th floor. Each ding felt like another nail in the coffin of his chances. By the time he reached the 15th floor, he was already 20 minutes late, and his reflection in the polished steel doors showed exactly what he had feared. He looked like he had just run a marathon. The Sterling and Associates reception area was everything Alex had imagined it would be. Marble floors, leather furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city. Behind a sleek modern desk sat a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a professional smile that seemed to falter slightly when she saw Alex approaching. "I'm Alex Rivera," he said, trying to catch his breath. "I have a 2 p.m. interview appointment, but I'm running a bit late." The receptionist, whose nameplate read Jessica, looked at her computer screen and then back at Alex with the expression that was polite but clearly concerned. "Mr. Rivera, yes, I see you here. Mr. Thompson has been waiting for you. He mentioned that punctuality is very important to him." Alex's heart sank even further. "I know, and I'm really sorry. There was an emergency outside the building. A woman was having a heart attack and I had to help her until the paramedics arrived." Jessica's expression softened slightly, but she still looked doubtful. That's very noble of you," she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Let me call Mr. Thompson and let him know you're here. While Jessica made the call, Alex tried desperately to fix his appearance. He smoothed down his hair with his hands and attempted to straighten his wrinkled shirt. His jacket had a small stain on the sleeve from where Catherine had gripped his arm, and no amount of brushing would make it disappear. He could feel sweat on his forehead, partly from rushing and partly from the stress of the entire situation. Mr. Thompson will see you now, Jessica said, hanging up the phone. But I should warn you, he seemed less than pleased about the delay. She led Alex down a hallway lined with glass-walled conference rooms where important-looking people sat around polished tables, discussing what were undoubtedly important matters. Alex caught glimpses of presentations on large screens, charts with upward trending lines and people in expensive suits, gesturing confidently as they spoke. This was the world he desperately wanted to be part of, and he was walking into it looking like he had just been in a street fight. Mr. Thompson's office was smaller than Alex had expected, but it was neat and organized in a way that immediately told you what kind of person worked there. Every pen was in its place, every paper was perfectly aligned, and the man behind the desk looked like he had never had a wrinkled shirt in his entire life. Robert Thompson was probably in his early 40s, with thinning brown hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He was wearing a crisp white shirt and a tie that was knotted with mathematical precision. When Alex entered the room, Mr. Thompson looked up from his computer with an expression that could have frozen water in July. "Mr. Rivera," he said, not standing up or extending his hand for a handshake. "You're 22 minutes late." "Yes, sir, I know, and I sincerely apologize," Alex began, but Mr. Thompson held up a hand to stop him. "I hope you have a very good explanation because, in my experience, how a person handles a job interview is a pretty good indication of how they'll handle the job itself." Alex took a deep breath and launched into his explanation. There was a medical emergency right outside the building. An older woman was having what appeared to be a heart attack, and I couldn't just walk past her. I stayed with her until the paramedics arrived and made sure she got proper medical attention. Mr. Thompson stared at him for a long moment, his expression unchanged. "Do you have any proof of this alleged emergency?" The word alleged hit Alex like a slap. "Proof? Well, there were paramedics and an ambulance and other people saw what happened." "I see." Mr. Thompson made a note on a pad of paper. "And in this emergency situation, it never occurred to you to call our office and inform us that you would be late?" Alex felt his face flush. "Honestly, no, sir. I was focused on helping someone who I thought might be dying. Calling about my interview wasn't exactly my first priority." Another note on the pad. "Well, let's proceed then, shall we? Though I have to say, this is not the kind of first impression that typically leads to employment." For the next 15 minutes, Mr. Thompson grilled Alex with questions, but it was clear that the interview was over before it had even begun. Alex tried his best to focus, but his mind kept drifting back to Catherine. Was she okay? Had they gotten her to the hospital in time? Did she have family who had been notified? "Mr. Rivera, are you listening to me?" Mr. Thompson's sharp voice cut through Alex's thoughts. "I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?" Mr. Thompson's jaw tightened. "I asked about your experience with database management systems, but you seem to be somewhere else entirely." "I apologize. I guess I'm still a bit shaken up from what happened outside." "Mr. Rivera, if you can't handle a simple interview without being distracted by outside events, how can we expect you to handle the demands of this position?" Alex tried to rally, to show Mr. Thompson that he was capable and qualified, but everything he said seemed to make things worse. When asked about his previous job, he stumbled over his words. When questioned about his computer skills, he gave answers that were technically correct but delivered without confidence. When Mr. Thompson asked why he wanted to work for Sterling and Associates, Alex's response felt hollow and rehearsed. The worst part was that Alex knew he was capable of doing this job. He had the education, the skills, and the work ethic. But sitting in that sterile office with Mr. Thompson looking at him like he was something unpleasant that had been tracked in on someone's shoe, Alex felt like every insecurity and fear from the past 3 months was being confirmed. "Well, Mr. Rivera," Mr. Thompson said, closing the folder that contained Alex's resume, "I think we've covered everything we need to cover. Is there anything else you'd like to know about my qualifications?" Alex asked desperately. "I know I didn't make the best first impression, but I really am committed to this opportunity." Mr. Thompson stood up, a clear signal that the interview was over. "We'll be in touch," he said, but his tone made it clear that they would not be in touch. At least not with good news. Alex shook Mr. Thompson's hand, which felt like shaking hands with a dead fish, and walked out of the office feeling smaller than he had in months. Jessica gave him a sympathetic smile as he passed her desk, but even her kindness couldn't soften the blow of what had just happened. The elevator ride down felt even longer than the ride up. Alex stared at his reflection again, but this time he wasn't just seeing wrinkled clothes and messy hair. He was seeing failure. He was seeing all the proof that Mr. Thompson needed to justify not hiring him. He was seeing confirmation of every fear he'd had about his worth in the job market. As he walked through the marble lobby toward the exit, Alex passed the spot where Catherine had collapsed just an hour earlier. There was no sign that anything had happened there. The sidewalk had been cleaned, people were walking by as if nothing had occurred, and life had moved on. Alex wondered if that's how quickly people would forget about his failed interview, if Mr. Thompson would even remember his name by tomorrow. Standing on the sidewalk outside Sterling and Associates, Alex felt more defeated than he had since losing his job 3 months ago. He had blown his best opportunity in weeks, and for what? To help a stranger who probably wouldn't even remember his name? He immediately felt guilty for thinking that way, knowing that he would do the same thing again without hesitation, but the disappointment was overwhelming. Alex reached into his pocket and felt Catherine's business card. For a moment he considered throwing it away. What was the point of keeping it? She probably gave business cards to everyone, and even if she did remember him, what could she possibly do? She was just one person in a company that clearly didn't want him, but something made him hold on to it. Maybe it was the way she had looked at him when she said thank you. Or maybe it was just the hope that somewhere in this city of millions, there was at least one person who thought he had done something right today. Alex started the long walk home, having no idea that the business card in his pocket would soon change everything. Catherine Sterling woke up in the hospital bed feeling like she had been hit by a truck. The bright white lights above her head made her squint, and the constant beeping of machines reminded her exactly where she was and why she was there. Her chest felt sore, and there was an IV line in her left arm that tugged slightly when she tried to move. "Mrs. Sterling, you're awake." A kind-faced nurse with curly red hair approached her bed with a warm smile. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been through a blender," Catherine replied, her voice hoarse from the oxygen mask they had removed earlier. "But alive, which I suppose is what matters." The nurse, whose badge read Nancy, checked the monitors around Catherine's bed. "You're very lucky," the doctor said. If that young man hadn't recognized the symptoms and acted so quickly, things could have been much worse. Catherine's hand instinctively went to her jacket pocket, but she realized she was wearing a hospital gown. "My clothes, where are they?" "I had a business card that someone gave me." "Everything is in the closet over there," Nancy said, pointing to a small wardrobe. "But you should rest. The doctor wants to keep you for observation for at least another day." "I need to make a phone call," Catherine said, trying to sit up despite the nurse's gentle protest. "That young man who helped me, I need to find him and thank him properly." Nancy helped Catherine settle back into her pillows. "Honey, you just had a heart attack. The most important thing right now is your recovery." But Catherine wasn't the type of person who let things go, especially when someone had quite literally saved her life. She had built her company from nothing through determination and attention to detail, and those same qualities that made her successful in business were now focused entirely on finding the stranger who had helped her. Later that evening, when the medical staff finally allowed her to have her personal belongings, Catherine retrieved the business card from her jacket pocket. But when she looked at it, she realized it wasn't the card the young man had given her. It was one of her own cards that had fallen out when she collapsed. In all the confusion, she must have grabbed the wrong one. No, she muttered, searching through all her pockets, but there was nothing else there. She had no way to contact him, didn't even know his full name. All she remembered was that he had kind eyes, spoke with a gentle voice, and had acted without hesitation when she needed help most. The next morning, Catherine was feeling much stronger, though the doctors were still insisting she take things easy. She had already been on the phone with her assistant, rearranging meetings and dealing with urgent business matters from her hospital bed, but her mind kept drifting back to her mysterious rescuer. "I need you to do something for me," she told her assistant during their third phone call of the day. "I need you to contact building security and get me the footage from outside our building yesterday around 1:45 p.m. "Is this about the incident?" her assistant asked. I heard there was some kind of emergency. Yes, and I want to find the person who helped me. Check with the paramedics, too. They might have gotten his name or contact information. By the afternoon, Catherine had a small army of people working on finding Alex. Her head of security reviewed the building's external cameras. Her assistant contacted the ambulance service, and even her driver was asking around to see if anyone had witnessed what happened. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Robert Thompson, the HR manager who conducted interviews, mentioned in passing that one of the candidates for the administrative assistant position had been extremely late the day before, claiming there had been a medical emergency outside the building. What was his name? Catherine asked, feeling her heart rate increase for entirely different reasons than the day before. Alex Rivera, Thompson replied. Frankly, I didn't believe his story. He showed up 22 minutes late, completely disheveled, claiming he had to help someone having a heart attack. It seemed like a pretty convenient excuse. Catherine felt the pieces clicking into place. What time was his interview scheduled? 2 o'clock. He finally showed up around 2:22, and the interview was a disaster. He seemed distracted and unfocused. I told him we'd be in touch, but honestly, he's not someone we'd consider hiring. Get me his file, Catherine said, her voice taking on the authoritative tone that her employees knew meant business. I want his resume, his contact information, everything you have on him. 20 minutes later, Catherine was staring at Alex Rivera's resume on her tablet. College graduate, 2 years of work experience before being laid off. Volunteer work with local charities. The photo attached to his application showed the same kind eyes she remembered from yesterday, though he looked much more put together than when she had last seen him. Reading through his qualifications, Catherine couldn't understand why Thompson had been so dismissive. Alex's background was exactly what they were looking for in an administrative assistant, and his references from his previous employer were glowing. The only mark against him was showing up late to the interview, and now Catherine knew exactly why that had happened. This young man saved my life, she said to Thompson when he came to her office later that day. Catherine had checked herself out of the hospital against her doctor's advice, though she had promised to take it easy and work from home for the rest of the week. Thompson's face went pale. I had no idea. He really was telling the truth? Every word of it, Catherine replied. And while he was helping me, he missed his interview. Then you treated him like he was lying and wasting your time. Mrs. Sterling, I sincerely apologize. If I had known, the problem, Robert, is that you didn't listen. This young man showed up to our company and demonstrated exactly the kind of character we claim to value. Compassion, quick thinking, and putting others before himself. And instead of recognizing that, you dismissed him. Thompson looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. What would you like me to do? I'll handle this personally, Catherine said, picking up her phone. But I think this is a good reminder for all of us about the importance of listening to people and not jumping to conclusions. That evening, Catherine sat in her home office looking at Alex's phone number on her computer screen. She had practiced what she was going to say, but now that the moment had arrived, she found herself nervous. How do you call someone and tell them that the person they saved wants to completely change their life? She dialed the number and waited. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Catherine began to worry that he might not answer a call from an unknown number. Hello? The voice was tentative, cautious in the way that people sound when they're not sure who's calling. Is this Alex Rivera? Yes, this is Alex. Who's calling? Catherine took a deep breath. This is Catherine Sterling. I don't know if you remember me, but you saved my life yesterday outside the Sterling and Associates building. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Catherine? Oh my God, are you okay? I've been worried about you since the ambulance took you away. How are you feeling? The genuine concern in his voice confirmed everything Catherine had sensed about him during those terrifying minutes on the sidewalk. This was a person who cared about others, who had been thinking about a stranger's well-being, even after his own day had gone terribly wrong. I'm doing much better thanks to you, Catherine said. The doctors told me that recognizing the symptoms quickly probably saved my life. I can't begin to tell you how grateful I am. I'm just glad you're okay, Alex replied. I felt terrible leaving without knowing if you were going to be all right. Alex, I need to tell you something. I know about your interview yesterday. Another pause. This one longer and filled with what Catherine could only imagine was embarrassment. You know about that? I know that you were late because you were helping me. I know that you missed your opportunity because you chose to do the right thing. And I know that my employee treated you poorly because he didn't understand what had happened. It's okay, Alex said quietly. I mean, it's not okay, but I understand why he didn't believe me. It probably did sound like a made-up excuse. It's not okay, Catherine said firmly. And I want to make it right. Can you come in to see me tomorrow morning? I'd like to meet with you properly this time. Are you sure? I don't want to take up your time when you should be recovering. Catherine smiled. Even now, this young man was more concerned about her well-being than his own prospects. I'm very sure, Alex. Can you be there at 10 o'clock? Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for calling. After hanging up, Catherine sat back in her chair, feeling more energized than she had since waking up in the hospital. Tomorrow, she was going to do something that would surprise everyone, including Alex Rivera. Sometimes the best employees weren't found through traditional interviews and hiring processes. Sometimes they revealed themselves through their actions when they thought no one important was watching. Alex barely slept that night. He kept replaying the phone conversation with Catherine Sterling over and over in his mind, trying to convince himself that it had actually happened. The CEO of Sterling and Associates had called him personally, thanked him for saving her life, and asked him to come in for a meeting. It felt like something out of a movie, not something that happened to people like him. He was up before dawn, going through his morning routine with extra care. This time, he wasn't just preparing for any interview. He was meeting with someone whose life he had saved, someone who had taken the time to track him down and thank him personally. Alex still didn't know what to expect from this meeting, but he knew it was important. The same shirt he had worn 2 days earlier was freshly laundered and pressed. His shoes were polished again, and he had even managed to get the small stain out of his jacket. Looking in the mirror, Alex barely recognized himself. The defeat and desperation that had marked his face after the failed interview with Mr. Thompson were gone, replaced by something he hadn't felt in months: hope. The bus ride downtown felt different this time. Instead of the nervous anxiety that had plagued him during his previous job searches, Alex felt a strange calm. Whatever happened in this meeting, he had already done something meaningful. He had helped someone when they needed it most, and that was worth more than any job rejection. Arriving at the Sterling and Associates building, Alex was struck by how different everything looked. The same marble lobby, the same security desk, the same elevators. But now he knew that the woman whose name was on the building was someone he had met, someone he had helped, someone who remembered him. The security guard who checked his ID was friendlier than usual, even smiling as he handed back Alex's driver's license. "Mrs. Sterling is expecting you," the receptionist said when Alex approached the desk. It was the same young woman, Jessica, who had been there during his disastrous interview with Mr. Thompson. But her demeanor was completely different now. Instead of the polite but skeptical tone she had used before, she seemed genuinely pleased to see him. "She asked me to escort you to her office personally," Jessica said, standing up from behind her desk. "I have to say, everyone here has been talking about what you did. You're something of a hero around here." Alex felt his cheeks warm with embarrassment. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Jessica said as they walked toward the elevators. "You did what anyone should do. But most people wouldn't. There's a difference." The elevator ride to the top floor felt surreal. Alex had never been this high in the building before, and as the floors ticked by, he felt like he was ascending to another world. When the doors opened, he was greeted by a reception area that was even more impressive than the one downstairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. Mr. Rivera, a woman in her 30s with dark hair and a warm smile, approached him. "I'm Linda, Mrs. Sterling's executive assistant. She's ready to see you now." As they walked down a hallway lined with awards and photographs of Catherine Sterling, meeting with various important-looking people, Linda chatted easily with Alex. "Mrs. Sterling has been looking forward to this meeting all morning. She's told everyone about what you did for her." They stopped in front of a set of double doors made of rich, dark wood. Linda knocked gently and then opened one of the doors. "Mrs. Sterling? Mr. Rivera is here. Please send him in," came Catherine's voice from inside. Alex stepped into the office and was immediately struck by how warm and welcoming it felt, despite its obvious elegance. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and comfortable seating areas were arranged around coffee tables. Behind a large but not imposing desk sat Catherine Sterling, looking much healthier than when Alex had last seen her. She stood up as he entered, and Alex was relieved to see that she moved easily, with none of the distress he remembered from 2 days earlier. She was wearing a navy blue dress that was professional, but not intimidating, and her silver hair was styled in a way that made her look both authoritative and approachable. "Alex," she said, coming around her desk to greet him, "thank you so much for coming. Please sit down. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water?" "I'm fine, thank you," Alex said, settling into one of the comfortable chairs facing her desk. "How are you feeling? Are you sure you should be back at work so soon?" Catherine smiled, and Alex could see why she had been successful in business. Her smile was genuine and warm, but there was also a sharpness in her eyes that suggested she didn't miss much. "The doctors weren't thrilled about me coming back so quickly, but I promised to take it easy. Besides, I had something important I needed to take care of." She moved back to her chair but didn't sit down immediately. Instead, she looked at Alex with an expression that was part gratitude and part curiosity. "I want you to know that I've spent the last 2 days learning everything I can about what happened on Tuesday. Not just the medical emergency, but everything that happened afterward." Alex felt a knot form in his stomach. "Mrs. Sterling, if this is about the interview with Mr. Thompson, I want you to know that I don't blame him for not believing me. I know how it must have sounded." "Actually," Catherine said, finally sitting down, "it's exactly about that interview, and I want you to know that I'm appalled by how you were treated. He was just doing his job." "No, Alex, he wasn't. His job is to identify talented, capable people who would be assets to this company. And instead of recognizing that the person sitting in front of him had just demonstrated extraordinary character and quick thinking under pressure, he dismissed you as unreliable." Catherine leaned forward in her chair, her expression becoming more serious. "Do you know what I've learned about you in the past 2 days? I've learned that you graduated with honors from college. I've learned that your previous employers considered you one of their most dependable workers. I've learned that you volunteer at a homeless shelter on weekends, even when you were employed and had better things to do with your free time." Alex shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Mrs. Sterling, I appreciate you looking into my background, but I'm not really comfortable with being called a hero or anything like that. I just helped someone who needed help. And that," Catherine said, "is exactly why I know you're the right person for this company." "Alex, I didn't ask you here to give you a lecture about Robert Thompson's poor judgment, though he and I will certainly be having a conversation about his interviewing techniques." She paused, and Alex could sense that whatever came next was important. "I asked you here because I want to offer you a job." Alex blinked, certain he had misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "I want to offer you a position here at Sterling & Associates. Not the administrative assistant role you originally applied for, but something better. I need an executive assistant, someone who can help me manage my schedule, handle important communications, and act as a liaison between my office and the rest of the company." The room seemed to spin slightly around Alex. "Mrs. Sterling, I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm grateful, incredibly grateful. But I don't want you to feel like you have to offer me a job just because of what happened." Catherine leaned back in her chair and smiled. "Alex, I didn't build this company by making decisions based on gratitude alone. Yes, I'm grateful to you for saving my life, but I'm offering you this job because you're qualified for it, because you've demonstrated the kind of character I want in the people who work for me, and because I think you'll be excellent at it." She stood up and walked over to one of the windows looking out at the city below. "You know, when I started this company 25 years ago, I was in a position not unlike yours. I had just graduated from college, I was struggling to find work, and I felt like the world was conspiring against me. The difference was that I didn't have anyone willing to take a chance on me. I had to create my own opportunities." Catherine turned back to face Alex. "But you don't have to do that. I'm willing to take a chance on you not because I owe you something, but because I recognize talent and character when I see it." Alex felt tears threatening to form in his eyes, and he blinked them back. "What would the salary be?" Catherine named a figure that was more than Alex had ever imagined earning, especially right out of unemployment. It wasn't just enough to pay his rent and buy groceries. It was enough to start building a real life, to maybe even help his mother back home, to begin thinking about a future instead of just surviving day to day. There's also full health and dental coverage, Catherine continued. 3 weeks of vacation to start and opportunities for professional development. I believe in investing in my employees. Alex, if you do well in this role, and I believe you will, there will be opportunities for advancement. Alex looked around the office, trying to process what was happening. 3 days ago, he had been eating instant noodles for dinner and wondering how he was going to pay his rent. Now the CEO of a major consulting firm was offering him a job that would change his entire life. Mrs. Sterling, I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, she said, returning to her chair. Just do good work. Maintain the integrity you showed on Tuesday and help me build this company into something even better than it already